Okay, it's story time again. We're sitting in the garden here. The snow is almost gone, and we had the one tree that was hanging over the shop. We cut that down the other day, or I didn't cut it down. I had it cut down, and it's sitting back in the forest there, and the barn is safe. So. We're going to talk about, what was I, maybe 18. I had bought a Triumph Bonneville, and I was just riding that all over everywhere. And it was the early love revolution. We were experimenting with everything that we could get our hands on. And one day we're in the gourmet house, which was a kind of a food court where all the little food booths were around the outside, and then there was a big seating area in the middle. And we had taken some LSD, acid we called it in those days, and we were sitting in the middle of the gourmet house, just coming on, just blooming, just pretty much gone. We were at the point where we didn't really have to talk anymore. We could just communicate telepathically. And there was 4 of us, and we were just sitting there, wah, just like, having a great time. And who walks up? Mom. Oh my God. Shit, I was like, and I couldn't talk. I mean, I was right at the peak. And I'm like, I couldn't say a word. And she was trying to talk to me, and I could see the worried look in her face, and I wanted to explain to her, it's okay, Mom, it's just acid. And of course, in those days, acid was like the big no. Everybody was gonna die. So she leaves. I don't think much about it. That night, all 4 of us go over to one of the guys' apartments, and we're sitting there, and the cops show up, and they knock on the door, and I get arrested, or not arrested, but I get detained. And it turned out that Mom had gone into the police department and had me committed for in the mental ward for 3 days observation. Now, I'm like pretty much still winging out with acid. I mean, it lasts a long time. And so I go into jail, and then they take me down to the Highland Mental Hospital part and put me in there. And I'm like, I spend the night, and it's fine. A bunch of whacked out people in there, which was okay. Nobody was dangerous. And next morning, this guy shows up, and he says, "Well, your mom had you arrested," and that was first I heard of it. And so I need to get someplace to sit. Okay, so Mom has me arrested. I'm in the mental ward in Highland State Hospital, Highland Hospital in Oakland, California. So next morning, guy shows up, and he says, "Well, I'm your lawyer." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not sure I need a lawyer." He goes, "Well, you're going to need a lawyer because what happened a year ago has a lot to do with what's going on right now." And I'm like, a year ago. Well, it turned out about a year ago, a couple of buddies and I, you got to understand, I was pretty wild back in those days. A couple buddies and I stole a 1964 GTO from a used car sales lot and drove it for about a month back to Colorado. And of course got arrested back in Colorado and spent a month in jail, and that's a whole nother story. But what came of that is the judge said, all right, you can go back to California, and you're going to be on probation for 3 years, and if at any time in those 3 years you get in trouble, then you come back to Colorado and we put you in prison for 2 years. And I'm like, okay. So, but I kind of forgot about it. I mean, I saw my probation officer and all that stuff, and gave him about this much jive every time I went. So the lawyer says, well, it turns out you have a police hold, and you're going to be here until you go to court. And then probably what's going to happen is they're going to violate your probation, and you're going back to Colorado to jail. Oh, well, that's not good. So he says, but the alternative is you're in a mental hospital, and you could just plead mentally incompetent. And you probably won't have to go to court, and you will just spend time, you're going to spend 90 days in the mental hospital. And I went, well, 2 years in jail or 90 days in a mental hospital, hey, I'll take the mental hospital. He says, okay, good. So he says, here's what I want you to do. I just want you to just be your weird-ass, crazy self for the next 3 days, so that the doctor writes you up as not mentally stable. So, next 3 days, man, I'm Mr. Wacko. I'm bouncing off the walls and freaking out and causing all kinds of trouble. And, the doctor finally just writes me up and says, okay, you need to go to a wider observation, 3 months. And I said, okay, fine. So they haul me down to Agnew State Hospital, which was this kind of sprawling, it must have been 100 acres of these old 1930s buildings, concrete buildings with, screens, heavy gauge screens on the windows and locked doors. And they took me down there and they dropped me into a ward, the Alameda County ward. And there was like 40 or 50 guys in that room. It was a big room. I mean, there was plenty of room and everything. And they gave me a bed and, the whole thing. And so there I am in the mental hospital with nothing to do. And so I figured, well, I'm already crazy, so why not just get whacked out and have fun? So I kind of did. And, 3 or 4 days later, some of my buddies started showing up and coming to visit me. They couldn't come into the building, but they could sit out on the lawn, and I could be at the window of the barber shop, which was part of the environment, and we could talk to each other. Well, after 3 or 4 days of that, being the creative characters that they were, they brought a bag of weed, and they happened to find a piece of metal pipe laying up next to the building, and it was about 10 feet long, and that's where the window was about 10 feet. So they got a joint going, put it up to the window, and blew smoke through the pipe up to me. And I'm like, oh man, I'm good. I'm having a great time. So that happened for, I can't tell you. They came to visit every 2 or 3 or 4 days, and after a while they left me a little bag of weed outside, and I had it brought in, and of course on the QT. And I spent 3 months in that hospital, but after about 10 days, I decided that, you know, and I was on total lockup. I couldn't go out on the grounds without an attendant with me. And so that wasn't too cool, but I decided after about 10 days that it was time. They weren't going to hold me. And so I figured out a way to get out. And so the greatest escape is coming soon. Oh, yes, please subscribe and hit the little bell down below, and it'll tell you when to come in. Or, I mean, when I put a new video up. I put these video ups every Saturday. So, hey, I hope you had fun. Nick Collier, checking out.